and I heard something going. The problem with us when we get to starting about something, we never actually finish it because we branch off into so many damn different directions that every one of them has very important meaning towards what we're discussing in the first place. What we call a Bigfoot and a Sasquatch, we call them boogers in the South. I said, what in the hell is that?
All right, Bear, I got one for you. This one comes from Mike, and I'm throwing it your way because this is something that you and I have talked about for hours on end. Mike's question is, or in reality, the issue he would like you to address is silence. I've heard that before an encounter occurs, there can be at times an eerie silence where no animals, bird, or insect can be heard. The forest seems to go completely silent. What is this phenomenon about? I understand that a Sasquatch is a predator, but to cause insects such as chirping crickets to stop is puzzling. How often does silence precede an encounter? Why is there silence? Do other predators cause the same type of silence? Do encounters occur without silence? In other words, are animals, birds, and insects lively just before or during an encounter?
All right. This one, we're going to do a whole show on this one. Like you said, we've discussed this a bunch of times. Okay. Two things could be in play here, possibly even three. I'm going to go with Tim's. Tim's good at this one. I'll save that one till last. One of them could be, I call it the predator-prey type syndrome. What brought this to my attention is through the actual act of hunting in white-tailed deer. I'm 57 years old. I've been killed my first deer when I was 12 with a single shot 410. Been hunting since I was 8 years old with a rifle. Through all those years, especially the early years, my intent and my purpose was to kill that big old buck. And I was so intent on it all times. I mean, staring intently. I mean, when I walked out of the deer camp and would be heading to my deer stand or my blind or wherever, I'd be into that hunter stalking mode. And I'm talking about, your head is slowly turning. I mean, you're so itching to harvest that trophy buck that you're so intent on looking at everything, that your outward appearance. Actually, I've done a lot of looking around in some medical, terms in regard to predator-prey syndrome. And scientists say that you can exude from the pores of your skin the increase in your heart rate due to you are so intently focused on what you're out there to harvest or kill. I don't like using the word kill because there's a lot of people on this show that are non-hunters, but that's a different subject altogether. I love to hunt, and I understand what hunting's all about when it's done correctly and legally and done in the proper and respectful way. You take from the earth, but you always give something back in return because the earth takes care of you. You got to pay her back. Anyhow, I've seen a number of times when a deer would come into a field, there'd be no wind blowing, nothing going on, nothing. And I'll be so intently looking at that deer to see if it has antlers on its head or if it's a legal deer to shoot. I'd be intently watching because, I've learned the body language of deer. And when they drop their head down and they're feeding, you watch their tail, you watch their actions, you watch their movements, the whole 9 yards before you pick your moments where you slowly raise your gun up to, probably focus in on what you're going to plan on shooting. And for no reason at all, that damn deer will just look straight up and look you square in the eye. And it'll twitch that tail once.
Yep.
It'll twitch that tail twice, and then it's gone.
Gone.
It's gone. No reason in the world for it to do nothing.
And from 150, 200 yards away,
Yes. I'm glad you said that, Tim. And the only explanation is you are so focused on it, that you give yourself away. Now, let's get to the silent part. I know at times, and Kumbo and Matt knows this too, when Bigfoot comes, we've done this for years now. When he comes into the picture, the atmosphere is a cool type atmosphere, but it's almost like a light switch. Something happens during the course of all this interaction. It's like you almost went over there to a light switch and turned it off, and everything just changes. Everything goes absolutely quiet. No crickets, no insects, nothing going on, nothing. And that's when all of a sudden, them little hairs on the back of your neck, and as Tim calls them, them chili bumps start popping up for no unexplained reason on a human body. And I think that's a recessed sense. You know, everybody talks about the sixth sense is lost. I think that was your survival sense for years ago when we wasn't as modernized as we are right now. It's an instinctive survival sense that comes to bear. It's something that's ingrained in our body since, time immortal. It's a survival instinct. I've talked to a lot of people, campers, people who camp a lot or stay outdoors a lot, who work outside a lot, hunters, outdoor type people who are in those type environments all the time. They are more sensitive to it than your average person. Your average person, and this is no fault of theirs, due to the environment and the life they live, they've never have put themselves in a position to be subjected by something like this to actually trigger this survival instinct to happen. Because it's really amazed me. Kumbo and Matt have seen this themselves. We could have a group of people and we could be having a good time with the interaction with these boogers. And then when that light switch goes off, I would guesstimate that a quarter of the crowd will instinctively understand that something's not right, because the quarter of the crowd that's telling everybody else, hey, we got to load up, we got to leave, something's not right here, we got to get the hell gone. And they, why? What's different? What's changed? Hey, listen, do you hear anything? No. Why have we got to leave? I said, something has changed, something has told us we got to get the hell gone. Yeah. God, I miss Bo. I'm talking about Kumbo's dog. That dog knew before any human instinct would ever come to bear. A lot of times we have accidentally ignored Bo, and it'd be too late, and the only thing that would signal to us that something's going on, Bo's either done jumped on top of Kumbo's toolbox trying to tear in the back window to get in the cab of the truck, or he's scratching on the door, and he starts whining. And then, Kumbo look around at me and I look at him, and then all of a sudden it'll hit us. And those chili bumps and your hair starts rising up. Said, wait a minute, something ain't right here. And, but, it was good that we had Bo when we did. And, but if the warning signs are there, it will affect you. Now, I'm going to get into my end, and that's when I'm going to let Kumbo take over. The third thing is, and I think this has a lot to do with it, is Tim calls it infrasound. I call it ultrasound. The only reason I say ultrasound is because I did some research on it, and the only sounds that small insects like crickets and cicadas and all them other insects in the night that can hear in their hearing range is only in an ultrasonic tone.
That's correct.
For some reason, they will switch off just like you hit that light switch again I was telling about earlier. And the only thing I can think of that makes that happen as instantaneous as it does is if it's hearing something that we as humans cannot hear. And it affects their actions, their noise-making action, all at once. Those are my three theories, and I'm going to let Kumbo expound more on the ultra and the infrasonic side of it.
Yeah. Basically, the range of human hearing, and this is for a young person that hasn't blown their eardrums out listening to loud rock music. This is a young person in their prime that their hearing hasn't been damaged, that they can hear from about 20 hertz on the low end. That's 20 cycles per second. That's really low, ultra low bass, up to about 20,000 hertz. So you've got the normal range of human hearing is 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz on the upper end. Frequencies below 20 hertz are referred to as infrasound, INFRA sound, and frequencies above 20,000 hertz are referred to as ultrasound, ULTRA, or ultrasonic sounds. And so, and Bear is correct, insects and such as that hear in the ultrasonic range. Now, but there's a lot of animals, in fact, most animals are also sensitive to low frequency vibrations. That's how snakes, snakes have no ears per se, but because they're so well connected to the ground, they detect low frequency vibrations through the ground, and they can feel you coming from a long distance away, because they can feel the vibrations in the ground. And insects can do the same thing, and other animals. There are many animals that can pick up the vibrations, the low frequency vibrations in the ground of you approaching or another animal approaching. So even though we're talking about animals that their ears per se are tuned to hear in the ultrasonic region, they can still detect vibrations in the infrasonic region. So I don't know if when Bigfoot comes into the area, or if they're picking up an ultrasonic noise that the Bigfoot makes, or the infrasonic noise that Bigfoot makes. But we know I have done a lot of experimentation with infrasound in a lab environment, and I have exposed myself to it. I've exposed other people to it. I've read about some of the testing and messing with it that Nikola Tesla used to do, and how he studied its effects upon people. I also know that when I worked for the government, that there was a lot of work developing infrasonic weaponry, using sound as a weapon, and the French were pretty good at that. They had some pretty fairly sophisticated weaponry. We have there's not much of it out there, but we have a couple of infrasonic weapons that are used in special cases. And infrasound affects people. It can make you feel giddy. It can make you feel sort of euphoric. But as your exposure to it goes longer and longer, or the frequency changes somewhat, or the intensity or the decibels of it, the equivalent of the loudness of it increases, then it changes, that euphoria changes to like anxiety, worry, paranoia, and it can even go to the point that you're getting, sick, anaphylactic shock syndromes, nausea. You can even lose control of your bowels. It can cause diarrhea. There's people talk about something called the brown frequency that can cause you to mess your britches, and there is no one brown frequency. I can tell you that from doing tests on, having it tested on people. But if you hit the right person at the right, with the right, the correct frequency and the correct energy level, you can make them so sick that they'll heave and they'll start, puking, and they'll even lose control of their bowels and mess themselves, or their bladder and pee themselves. That can happen. In fact, one of Nikola Tesla's best friends was Mark Twain, and Mark Twain was wearing one of his, the story goes, Mark Twain was wearing one of his nice white suits that he was famous for wearing, and they were in Tesla's lab messing around with infrasound, and Twain was enjoying it. He kept telling Tesla to turn it up, and Tesla said, well, no, I tried to warn him, and Twain said, no, turn it up. So he did, and Tesla did turn it up, and supposedly Twain missed himself, and ruined his nice, clean white suit. But anyway, now, having worked with infrasound and recognized when you could feel it in your body, even though you couldn't hear it with your ears. It was below the threshold of human hearing. I learned to recognize it by the vibrations that you feel. And we started. I noticed that several times in the field, in close proximity to Bigfoot, that, and when I say close proximity, I'm talking about 50 yards or less. That I would feel this vibration and such. And if you've ever stood on a sidewalk or on a street corner or the curb when a marching band goes by, and you feel, and they're playing their music, and especially the tubas and the drums and everything, and you feel that vibration in your body, that's sort of the sensation I'm talking about. And anyway, they use that type of they use that infrasound for various purposes, and I think one of it is they use it as a weapon against us, both to disorient us, but also maybe to try to use it to scare us out of an area. Help get us out of their area. But we know that tigers use infrasound to temporarily stun their prey so that they can pounce it more effectively. Turkeys use infrasound in their strutting and stuff to when they're doing their gobbling and they're strutting and what's called strutting and drumming. That's some of the last moves they make before they top a hen and breeder is and they're emitting infrasound, and I don't know if it's to sort of stun the hen long enough so that the tom can get on her or what, but don't know what the exact purpose of it is, but they do generate it. We know that
is that why I generate infrasound after Thanksgiving for a couple of days?
I generate it after a good big bowl of chili. But elephants generate it, to use it for long range communications. But different types of animals use it for different things. But it definitely has an effect on other animals. It can sort of stun you or disorient you or whatever. But we've noticed that sometimes when we're in close proximity to maybe not the alpha, but younger boogers, that you can hear this noise. It's like, these boogers, they're not fully mature yet, so their voices, just like on a human, like a teenage human, their voice hasn't gotten into the pitch range that it will arrive at as an adult. Their voice is still sort of breaking and cracking, like if you're trying to sing or something. Well, these young boogers will be trying to use infrasound on us, and they can't quite hit those low enough frequencies. So you hear, if you're still enough, you hear this you detect this wavering frequency moving up and down as they try to get their voice down into that low infrasound range. We've heard that numbers of times in the past, and it's almost always when there are younger boogers around messing with us.
Okay, I have a question.
Yep.
That makes me think about the different times. I know our good friend Cindy Goodbrake has talked about this in the past. Other people have mentioned it. Could that be an explanation of the singing or chanting some people describe hearing?
Very possible.
Very possible could, because it sounds a lot like sort of some of the Australian Aboriginal chanting and singing, and the Mongolian, the didgeridoo, or the Mongolian throat singing, they call it, throat chanting, and some of the chanting that that's part of the Shinto religion in Japan. I think it's Shinto. But
and that's why I think it's a form of communication. I think they're actually. I think you neglected to say, and I know you didn't mean to, that when we get a number of these things around us, it gets more intense that way.
Yes,
and
it definitely does.
I really think they're communicating with each other in a sound frequency that we can't, as a human, hear. But damned if Bo didn't respond to that kind of crap in a heartbeat. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
He was like a metronome. I mean, he was picking it up quicker than we ever thought about it, But also we noticed that this effect would cause the goosebumps, the hair on your skin, and the back of your neck raising up, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it's just like it's electrical atmosphere all around you, and it's spontaneous. I mean, me and Tim have stood there for 15 up to an hour listening to these suckers, and then all of a sudden Tim will go there, Bear, look at my arm, and there'll be goosebumps all over. I said, well, hell, and I pick mine up, my hair will be standing straight up. It's time to go, ain't it, Tim?
Yep, time to go. We got somewhere one day. People may not believe this. They hit us with something, and our hair, bear in mind, both of us, our hair stood up so stiff, our hats come up off of our head, look like out of in a freaking cartoon.
You can feel it raising your hat off your head.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep. It sure did. I mean, it's like a dadgum cartoon.
And I think we were both sitting in the cab of your truck at the time. I mean, we was even enclosed in a truck.
I don't remember. I just know that we decided it was time to get the hell out of there. But it was crazy. I think we were sitting in the truck. In fact,
I think it was up there.
I think we were down there in that. Yeah.
You know where I'm talking about.
I know exactly where you're talking about.
I think that's where it happened, because you said, I don't believe I'm getting out. I said, I don't believe I am either, Tim. We're just sitting here and roll windows down, put the recorder on top of the truck.
That's
Matt,
bad
what's your position on this, bro?
Well, the ultrasonic thing is interesting. It's an area that you were the first person to bring it up, as far as I know of. And I agree with, that's what the insects would have to be hearing. But at the same time, the infrasound could produce vibrations that the insects feel.
Right.
And, if one insect feels it, they all shut up.
That's why that's why we can say, I think it's in both ranges. And who cannot say that a booger's
Well,
vocal pitch range is not in the ultra and the infrasonic
that's what I was going to
range?
bring out. One of the things that we've discovered, looking at doing spectral analysis. This is this is a piece of an instrument. A spectrum analyzer is an instrument that you can run a signal through, typically an audio signal, and it will break it down and it will tell you the frequencies that are within a particular noise, any type of a noise or a call or something that you've been able to record. And one of the things that we have noted, and it's not just me, it's been a lot of people that have done spectrum analysis of Bigfoot calls, is it's very, very common for them to have multiple frequency spikes or major points within their calls. It's like that they can, like if you say you hit an A on a piano or the E string on a guitar or whatever, and you record that and you play that back to a spectrum analyzer, it shows that the major frequency range that's shown is along that the frequency
Right.
that E string makes, or that A key on the piano makes, or whatever. Whereas you play a chord on your guitar or a chord on your piano, you record that, play it back through your spectrum analyzer, it shows peaks in there at each one of the notes from each one of the strings or each one of the keys that you've just played. Well, you play a human voice through there. Human voices typically can hit, we can make noises that are sort of a smeared blend of two or three notes, but we can't really make them real clean and distinct like what you record off of an instrument, like a piano or a guitar or a harp or something like that, or even a harmonica. We can't get the clean breaks in the human voice that with multiple notes at one simultaneous time that you can with a musical instrument. But we see that in Bigfoot calls.
Sometimes.
And that's one reason. Sometimes, that's correct. That's one way that Stan Courtney has been able to separate some of these weird, like the Illinois howl or the Ohio howl or the Colorado howl. He's been able to separate that from dog howls and coyote howls and stuff, because it has a much wider frequency range with distinct notes happening within that howl at any particular point in there that you do not see in a dog's howl or a coyote's howl or a wolf's howl. It's just very distinctly different.
Yeah.
There's nothing else there's no other animal out there that we've been able to come up with recordings of that have that distinctive audio signature.
Whenever I first noticed it, I started referring to it as a double harmonic.
That's correct.
It's like they're producing two different frequency ranges at the same time.
Right. And I have seen calls that we've run through the spectrum analyzer that has a very, very low frequency component to it, and in the very same call, at the same time, there is a high frequency component of it, way up high, way higher than a dog or a wolf or a human can do. It's weird. So very well, it's possible that some of them can emit. Maybe the alphas, when they're older, and they probably get more practice making noises than Pavarotti, because that's so a vital part of their survival. So, it's very possible that they can emit infrasound and ultrasound at the same time. We don't know. We haven't been able to get one to stand up there in front of a microphone long enough for us to record him. And but I'm hoping old Dale Boswell is going to help us do that, though. And
Yep.
I want Dale to teach one of them to sing some good old Hank Williams, you know. But anyway, that's my take on it.
Did we exhaust that one, Matt? Or
well,
have you got any further takes on?
We could keep going, but
Oh yeah.
to be fair, we'll move on.
Yeah.
Our next question, it's actually a couple questions from a guy named Tom. It says, hello guys, I'm very curious about two things that I have not heard you address. The three-toed Bigfoot creatures. This is a very odd detail with the Southern reports. How could a primate-type creature have 3 toes? There are cases with human inbreeding where there are foot deformities, but this means the feet are not that functional. Anyway, I've always wondered about this. The other question is about the old folk monster and Momo flaps of the 70s. Tom remembers these when he was a kid. The Boggy Creek movie scared the heck out of me. I'd like to hear what you guys know about these incidents and what you think about them now. And I think he's probably asking that because, if I'm not mistaken, the folk monster in the Legend of Boggy Creek left 3-toed tracks, right?
I think maybe.
We're going to say yes. We're going to say they found some 3-toed tracks or 4-toed tracks or something.
Well, I know around Bear's Farm is eat up with 3-toed tracks. I've seen more 3-toed tracks around Bear's Farm than all the rest of my life put together. So, have at it, Bear.
All right. I think I got the answer. I'm going to do this one kind of like what we did with the sound one. I'm going to kind of give you 2 for sure, and if y'all come up with any more, we'll dissect them. Mm-hmm. One is they don't wear footwear. We know this. We also know that as a child or whatever, we used to run through the woods barefooted. I did. I think Tim did, and I know Matt has when he was a youngster.
Absolutely.
How many times we ever stomp our toe or damn near cut a toe off in our haphazard running through the woods? And then the first thing your mama says when you get home and she's getting the fire cone out to burn your ass to death with, to torture you with, I told you not once, but I told you 1,000,000 damn times to wear your shoes when you're in the woods. All right? Very possible Bigfoot loses a toe or 2 to attrition. So I'm going to take care of that one first. I'm thinking a lot of these 3-toed tracks you're seeing are 3 knuckles. And I'll tell you why. In the South, the ground, we don't have especially in Mississippi. Tim knows this. Alabama is not so much unless you're in a farming country or a bottomland type swampy area. And there are areas in Alabama that way. But in a lot of these low-lying areas, take Folk, Arkansas, for instance. I know that swampy type, delta type area where the Sulphur River comes in all together there at Folk and so forth, so on. I think the same thing happened in Louisiana, Missouri with the Moo Moo monster. I think that's a delta type basin too, is it not, Tim?
Yeah, well, it's right there on it's right there where the Salt River runs into the Mississippi River. And
right,
it's right there.
The soil is not rocky; it's really soft. Am I correct?
Well, there's some, but there's some hills and hollers and bluffs and stuff around there. Yeah, I mean,
but the area is kind of like Mississippi in a roundabout sort of way, right? Instead of mountains or granite and sandstone. Yeah.
No, it's not really. There's not any granite there. Not much, but there are sand deposits there. There's gravel deposits right in the river right there. I've fished all up and down through there, and there's not a whole lot of rock and stuff there. There are some little sort of broken limestone outcrops and stuff, but.
In other words, the soil's real conductive to leaving a track, correct?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And
All
what
right,
soil
now,
there is sort of soft. Yeah.
that's where I was going with this.
Yeah.
In Florida, it's been noted that they have three-toed Bigfoot down there, all up and down the South Carolina coast in that part, swampy type area. Louisiana's the same way. Honey Island swamp monster is supposed to be the three-toed rascal. All around Big Thicket area in Texas, three-toed Bigfoot. Louisiana, three-toed Bigfoot. Folk, Arkansas, or around Texarkana, that's kind of like a delta type area. Areas like that, if they're on all fours, make your fist into a knuckle right now as everybody's listening. And if you're agile enough, just drop onto the floor. Hopefully you got carpet. And tell me which three knuckles are prominent in hitting the floor. And you heard what I said, which three knuckles, because the pinky does not make too much of an indentation in solid ground. And as Kumbo said, sometimes they'll curl their thumb when they're in a quadrupedal position. Sometimes they don't. So when they do that, what you prominently got is a large-ass hand with a lot of separation that looks like three toes, especially with the imprint of the knuckle. Now, when it's in a quadrupedal motion, only the front pad of the foot touches the ground. The heel does not touch the ground, people. It's like a woman in high heel shoes. When you drop on all fours onto that carpet, like I told you to do, and you're just supporting yourself with your knuckles, which I promise you will be your index finger, your middle finger, and your ring finger, will be hitting the ground. Rarely does the palm actually hit the ground, but sometimes it does. The front pad of the foot, when you're in that position, your heel elevates upwards. Like I said, in the only description I can describe it as is a woman in high heel shoes. The only part, you don't have the stem sticking from your heel down, but you got the front pad of your foot. When a booger locomotes or moves in a quadrupedal motion, 9 times out of 10, that front pad of the foot will impact just behind those three knuckle imprints. I mean, they almost step in their track where the knuckle is, which leaves a impression of a Bigfoot track with three toes. So that's where the three-toed booger is coming from, is people interpreting as a Bigfoot can only move bipedally, in other words, on its 2 feet instead of on all fours. We've run into this problem ever since we got together on the internet in 1999, hadn't we, Tim?
Say that again now. I missed it. My phone has slipped off my ear.
Oh, I was just saying we've run into the three-toed track dilemma ever since we got into this thing in 1999, and we kept telling everybody, well, could it possibly be because they're in a quadrupedal mode and you got three knuckles showing and the front pad is impacting right behind the three knuckles and it makes it look like a full track? That's where the three toes come from.
Yeah, it's. I think some of them are definitely that way, but I've seen some that, dadgum though, I can't figure out. You know, there's some that just. There's some that definitely are made that way, absolutely, positively. But I've seen some other ones that I just couldn't figure it out. Of course, back when I used to find a lot of those things, I wasn't doing much. You know, I didn't ever do many casts of them, and I didn't ever really sit down and take the time that I would like to have now to really study some of them. So, you know, I don't know what to think about them. You know, I do know for a fact that some of them are made just like you say, because I have found some of the ones on your farm that we would find them, and it says, son of a gun, there's a three-toed track, and you look off to the side, and there's a thumbprint. about 4 inches away, 4 or 5 inches out to one side. So you knew that those were made just exactly like you said. But I've seen a couple of them though. I know I saw one down in Louisiana that was there was like 2 or 3 of them in a line, and they were deep and clear, and there was no thumbprints to the side, and those are the best ones I've ever seen. Those are the biggest ones I've ever seen. And that's another thing too. A lot of the 3-toed tracks you find are relatively small tracks, and that's another reason, another sort of a giveaway to me to think that they've probably been made by their knuckles, plus part of the foot part of the track from the back feet coming in behind it. But those tracks that down in Louisiana that I found were pretty good sized tracks. Those son of a guns were like 12, 13 inches long, which are by far the biggest ones that I've ever seen. And I had some pictures of them. I wish I didn't have anything to cast them with at the time, and the old camera I had at the time was the first digital camera that I ever owned, and it took crappy pictures. So, I don't have anything worth a crap to go back and look at them with. And where those tracks were, Bear. They were really close to a place that you've been that we can't go back into anymore.
Which one? No.
We ain't gonna. We're gonna just keep our mouth shut about that.
You found him in a strip club?
Yeah.
Well. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that.
What do you think, Matt? Your turn.
I don't think there's such a thing.
Yep.
I have to see a 3-toed track in a clear impression of one before I can form an opinion about 3-toed tracks. Now, in Oklahoma, we don't have 3-toed tracks, but we do have knuckle impressions, and those have 3 marks in them from the knuckles, like you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The pictures of the Honey Island Swamp, as far as I'm concerned, M.K. Davis and J. Michael debunked the Honey Island Swamp Monster years ago.
Yep. Alligator.
Alligator. There was actually a guy who had alligator shoes made where he had the impression of an alligator on a shoe, so it left a footprint with 3 toes. They found the boots that the guy used to do it.
Hey, you remember one particular person was putting a bunch of pictures of 3-toed tracks out on the internet. You remember what they turned out to be? And he was going, "Oh yeah, it's 3-toed booger, yeah." It was somebody's emu.
Emu. Yep.
An emu had escaped and was running around down in the swamp.
Hey, emu farming got very popular for a while.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
And people thought it was going to be the new beef. They thought it was going to be the new beef, and all these ranchers and stuff, you didn't need as much space or anything, and they started raising all these emus. Well, they couldn't sell them, they couldn't raise them, they couldn't get them to behave, they couldn't tame them, so they just turned them loose.
Right.
Let them go.
Mm-hmm.
Let them go.
Yeah.
And so there are, at least at one time, emus running around in the southern United States.
Yeah, I got a buddy of mine blew one away deer hunting, and a damn thing came up. He was sitting there at the base of a tree, and he said he's just sitting there, and he heard this racket behind him, and he sort of stomping along pretty loud in the leaves, and he turned around, craned around behind him, and said what the hell that noise was, and it was a damn emu, and it was only about 12, 15 feet from him, and he startled it.
Biggest damn turkey you ever saw.
Yeah, damn thing attacked him, and it was jumping up trying to spur him. They've got hellacious spurs on the backs of their feet, and hell, it hit one of his hit his jacket and slashed it open, and hell, he just let it have a good dose of 30-06, and and thing about it is, he said, bad thing about it is, he didn't know really exactly where to shoot the damn thing, and but it did not drop it in its tracks, but it eventually got it off of him.
One of them emus run me out of a deer stand one time, by gosh. I was sitting in that stand. I didn't even know there was a damn emu or such a creature in the country. I just knew it was the ugliest damn buzzard I ever seen coming down that hill, and I decided to get the hell gone.
There's a lady that we used to know down in Texas who had found this mystery bone in the woods out by her house. And I got to looking at that thing one time whenever I was down there trying to figure out what in the hell is this thing. And I had her send me a bunch of pictures. I studied that thing for about a year before I figured out that crazy looking skull I was looking at. I was holding it wrong, and it was the breastbone of a young emu.
Oh, wow.
I was finally able to figure that out, but it took me about a year.
Wow.
But yeah, that's a possibility. But I will say, as far as, one of the first theories I heard was the inbreeding causing deformities in the foot. Yeah, inbreeding wouldn't cause a routine deformity in the foot to have three toes like that for generation and generation and generation. Most of the problems caused by inbreeding wouldn't even be physical. They'd be more mental first, and those creatures wouldn't survive, and you wouldn't have a symmetrical looking three-toed print. You'd have a very deformed looking foot, like a club foot almost. Just to throw that out there.
Yep.
Guys, we're getting pretty close. Do you want to wrap things up, or do you want to handle one more and then do it?
Well, if we handle another one, we'd be probably another 20 minutes. That's up to you. It don't bother me.
I got. Let's just do one more. I'll pick a short one.
Yeah, throw one out there, and I'll try to take a quick shot at it.
Have you guys ever heard a Bigfoot laughing?
Oh, hell yes. Hell yes. I have heard them when the juveniles think they pulled something on you and they go running off. You'll hear them somehow almost like a damn hyena, sort of like a hyena laugh. And in fact, Bear, you remember you and I have heard that multiple times down there at this one particular area of Indian mounds. That
yeah.
They very commonly do that down there. Yeah.
Well, everybody always says they want to hear us do a Bigfoot call. I'm doing the best imitation I can of what I have learned to be their laugh. Only it's a hell of a lot deeper. It has a hell of a lot more volume. It's oh, 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 oh. And I've heard them do it several times in a hilarious way. And every time it's ever worked out, I knew when I heard them doing it, that was their form of laughter. I mean, they do have a sense of humor.
Which isn't that far-fetched, because primates laugh. Chimps do it. Gorillas do it.
Yeah.
We do it. It's just a natural reaction. It's just a vocalization we make. I don't even think scientists quite understand why we do it yet.
Yeah. Well, I know there was an area that I went to I'd gotten a report of this guy that was telling me that he said this one area down there on his farm, that he's got a little cabin out there in the woods, and he said every time I go down there, and he could only drive part of the way because it's down in a swampy area, and he said, where I park my truck, he said, every time I get out of the truck, I hear something running off through the woods down there. Sounds like a hyena. And I went down there the first time, and pulled up, got out of the truck. Bo and I got out of the truck. Bo immediately jumped back in the truck, and and here I hear something running off down through the woods. Sounds like a hyena. And I thought, this is a setup. They're just, and I heard it hit the slough, and then I realized that there was two of them, and because I could hear two distinct, they were separated by probably about 20 yards. I could hear two distinct ones going across this slough. When they got to the other side of the slough, all the cackling stopped, and I couldn't get Bo back out of the truck for a while. And I hung around down there, and until after dark. And sure enough, those two came back across the slough, and they were joined by some others that came around me, that sort of surrounded me, coming out of the tree line and out of some down in another big swampy area there to the east. And I actually, Bo got so scared he. They were trying to get up there and sneak up on us close, and he got up on the roof of the truck and was hunkered down on the roof of the truck, whining and crying. And I flipped on a flashlight, and my God, there was a pair of them standing there about 30 feet away. And I caught 8 pairs of eyes around me. Needless to say, we got in the truck and left quickly. But that was the first time I had ever encountered this hyena type laughing, and we've been back down there dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and we've heard that call a lot in that one particular area. And it's, when they if you pull up and you run them off, then they go running off through the woods, or they come up, sneak up on you and think they pull something on you, and you sort of jump them or catch them or something like that, and they go tearing off running. They'll do that hyena laughing. But I have heard the noise that Bear was making off over there in the woods when something's happened. Like that.
So yeah, heard them laugh.
Yep.
I've heard it once down in Sulphur. I don't know what was so damn funny, but apparently he thought it was pretty funny at the time.
Chad. It was Chad. I promise you, he's laughing.
Were you, Bear, were you with us when we were down there at that fishing pond, and there was one off in behind us about 200 yards out across the bean field over there in a cane brake, and he was over there laughing, and we could hear him over there, and about the time he'd get calmed down there, son of a gun would come out, and I don't know where he's getting the rocks, because down those delta bottoms there's not any rocks. So he was humming rocks at us from a couple of 100 yards away and landing them out in the pond. Then you hear him over there.
I may have been there, but I can't remember it right now.
Yeah.
I've heard them laugh in Mississippi. I've heard them laugh in Texas. I've heard them laugh in Oklahoma. They do have what I have interpreted it to be is a sense of humor, and they will laugh vocally. Mm-hmm. I think it's cool to hear them, even though at a lot of times when it happens, it's usually at your expense. In other words, they've done something that they didn't have no business doing, and you caught them as a human, and then they'd slip off just like a little kid snickering about it, only their snicker is a lot more louder than the average snicker. Mm-hmm. And I say, you son of a bitch, every time, I mean, look
I heard
at
him.
You over there laughing at me now after you done already, embarrassed the hell out of me or counted coup, and that's the way I consider it when they do acts like that. They got away with something that, they wasn't expected to get away with, and they just couldn't stand themselves. That was their way of gloating about it, and I just interpreted it as a low, slow laugh. I mean, I mean,
Well, I've heard that
times.
coyote cackle other places too.
Oh yeah.
We had them. We were sitting out at a guy's barn down on the Blue River south of Kansas City, right on the Kansas-Missouri state line, and we were sitting out there drinking beer, and booger sneaked around the side of the barn and came up and slapped the side of the barn like hell and scared us and goes running off down through the brush, and I hear him doing that hyena cackling. And he got us good. But that was why we were sitting out there, because he said if we'd just sit out there and just relax and drink a beer, he said they'll come up there and mess with you. And so that's what we were doing, and they did.
All right, guys. Well, I think that about wraps it up. Been fun. I enjoyed doing these kind of shows. Look forward to doing some more of these type shows in the future. We got a few things planned for guests on the show coming up. More information about that at a later date. Keep your ear to the ground at our Facebook page for our fans, and then the Bigfoot Outlaws Hideout group on Facebook. That's where you can find any upcoming information. Mm-hmm. And
it will be interesting. I'll put it this way. It's not a once in a lifetime deal, but it's a golden opportunity for a lot of people if they want to take advantage of it. That's all I'm going to say.
Correct.
Yep.
All right, guys. Until next time, have a good one.
Tim's good at this one. I'll save that one till last. One of them could be, I call it the predator-prey type syndrome. What brought this to my attention is through the actual act of hunting in white-tailed deer. I'm 57 years old. I've been killed my first deer when I was 12 with a single shot 410. Been hunting since I was 8 years old with a rifle. Through all those years, especially the early years, my intent and my purpose was to kill that big old buck. And I was so intent on it all times. I mean, staring intently. I mean, when I walked out of the deer camp and would be heading to my deer stand or my blind or wherever, I'd be into that hunter stalking mode. And I'm talking about, your head is slowly turning. I mean, you're so itching to harvest that trophy buck that you're so intent on looking at everything, that your outward appearance. Actually, I've done a lot of looking around in some medical, terms in regard to predator-prey syndrome. And scientists say that you can exude from the pores of your skin the increase in your heart rate due to you are so intently focused on what you're out there to harvest or kill. I don't like using the word kill because there's a lot of people on this show that are non-hunters, but that's a different subject altogether. I love to hunt, and I understand what hunting's in with these boogers. And then when that light switch goes off, I would guesstimate that a quarter of the crowd will instinctively understand that something's not right, because the quarter of the crowd that's telling everybody else, hey, we got to load up, we got to leave, something's not right here, we got to get the hell gone. And they, why? What's different? What's changed? Hey, listen, do you hear anything? No. Why have we got to leave? I said, something has changed, something has told us we got to get the hell gone. Yeah. God, I miss Bo. I'm talking about Coonbo's dog. That dog knew before any human instinct would ever come to bear. A lot of times we have accidentally ignored Bo, and it'd be too late, and the only thing that would signal to us that something's going on, Bo's either done jumped on top of Kumbo's toolbox trying to tear in the back window to get in the cab of the truck, or he's scratching on the door. And he starts whining. And then, Kumbo look around at me and I look at him, and then all of a sudden it'll hit us. And those chilly bumps and your hair starts rising up. Said, wait a minute, something ain't right here. And, but, it was good that we had Bo when we did. And, but if the warning signs are there, it will affect you. Now, I'm going to get into my end, and that's when I'm going to let Kumbo take over. The third thing is, and I think this has a lot to do with it, is Tim calls it infrasound, I call it ultrasound. The only reason I say ultrasound is because I did some research on it, and the only sound, and I heard something going. The problem with us when we get to starting about something, we never actually finish it because we branch off into so many damn different directions that every one of them has very important meaning towards what we're discussing in the first place. What we call a Bigfoot and a Sasquatch, we call them boogers in the South. I said, what in the hell is that?
All right, Bear, I got one for you. This one comes from Mike, and I'm throwing it your way because this is something that you and I have talked about for hours on end. Mike's question is, or in reality, the issue he would like you to address is silence. I've heard that before an encounter occurs, there can be at times an eerie silence where no animal's bird or insect can be heard. The forest seems to go completely silent. What is this phenomenon about? I understand that a Sasquatch is a predator, but to cause insects such as chirping crickets to stop is puzzling. How often does silence precede an encounter? Why is there silence? Do other predators cause the same type of silence? Do encounters occur without silence? In other words, are animals, birds, and insects lively just before or during an encounter?
All right. This one, we're going to do a whole show on this one. Like you said, we've discussed this a bunch of times. Okay. 2 things could be in play here, possibly even 3. I'm going to go with, but it's almost like a light switch. Something happens during the course of all this interaction. It's like you almost went over there to a light switch and turned it off. And everything just changes. Everything goes absolutely quiet. No crickets, no insects, nothing going on. Nothing. And that's when all of a sudden, them little hairs on the back of your neck, and as Tim calls them, them chili bumps start popping up for no unexplained reason on a human body. And I think that's a recessed sense. Everybody talks about the 6th sense is lost. I think that was your survival sense for years ago when we wasn't as modernized as we are right now. It's an instinctive survival sense that comes to bear. It's something that's ingrained in our body since, time immortal. It's a survival instinct. I've talked to a lot of people, campers, people who camp a lot or stay outdoors a lot, who work outside a lot, hunters, outdoor type people who are in those type environments all the time. They are more sensitive to it than your average person. Your average person, and this is no fault of theirs, due to the environment and the life they live, they've never have put themselves in a position to be subjected by something like this to actually trigger this survival instinct to happen. Because it's really amazed me. Kumbo and Matt have seen this themselves. We could have a group of people And we could be having a good time with interact, all about when it's done correctly and legally and done in the proper and respectful way. You take from the earth, but you always give something back in return, because the earth takes care of you. You got to pay her back. Anyhow, I've seen a number of times when a deer would come into a field, there'd be no wind blowing, nothing going on, nothing. And I'll be so intently looking at that deer to see if it has antlers on its head or if it's a legal deer to shoot. I'd be intently watching because, I've learned the body language of deer. And when they drop their head down and they're feeding, you watch their tail, you watch their actions, you watch their movements, the whole 9 yards, before you pick your moments where you slowly raise your gun up to, probably focus in on what you're going to plan on shooting. And for no reason at all, that damn deer will just look straight up and look you square in the eye. And it'll twitch that tail once.
Yep.
It'll twitch that tail twice, and then it's gone.
Gone.
It's gone. No reason in the world for it to do nothing.
And from 150, 200 yards away, even.
Yes. I'm glad you said that, Tim. And the only explanation is you are so focused on it, that you give yourself away. Now, let's get to the silent part. I know at times, and Kumbo and Matt knows this too, when Bigfoot comes, we've done this for years now, when he comes into the picture, the atmosphere is a cool type atmosphere.